Welcome to the Omnibus Show, a program for people who are interested in everything, with deep conversations on a wide variety of subjects. And now your host, Dave Gibbs.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Omnibus Show, the program for people who are interested in everything, with deep conversations on a wide variety of subjects. Today's guest is Amy Pauszek, who's just a multi-talented woman, who is a producer, photographer, publicist, and talent scout. You do it all.
Yeah, I try.
Well, Amy, it's great to have you on the show today. Thank you. You have shows that have been on PBS. You've been through all these film festival awards. And as well, you work with Talent Fusion in town, in the city. And so you're working with a lot of talent locally. Why don't we just go through it? As a producer, can you tell us about your leading projects, your films?
Well, I think it's important to say actually what I started out with, and that kind of got me to Talent Fusion and being a producer.
Okay.
Is I started out when I was 7 years old. We lived down the street from the head of the Starlight Musicals, which is kind of like Broadway. And he used to say, "Get that little one. We want the little one." And so, my first show or experience in any type of like setting was in The Music Man with Peter Marshall from the Hollywood Squares.
Hollywood Squares, yeah.
And then it went to Ed Ames and Shenandoah, and then it just continued on. And they actually wanted me to continue on with them, but because of my age and I come from a family, there's 6 kids in our family, and it just wouldn't work. I would say what happened is a friend of mine was doing a independent film, and it was actually a horror film. And she said, "Amy, everybody loves you. You're so funny all the time, and you're always trying to do things for people. I want to cast you as a really mean person, just as a quick thing." So I was like, okay.
She needed somebody.
Yeah. So my one line was, "No solicitors." And I remember I kept slamming, "No solicitation." And everybody was laughing. I finally got it. And it was just something really fun to do. And I thought, this is kind of neat, And so then her second film, she was doing a sci-fi, and she said, "I want to cast you as the mean secretary." And so
She had it in for you.
She had it in for me because I think she was like, "I think it would be funny that people know you. They'll be like, oh my gosh, Amy's so snotty in this picture." Anyways, and so during that process, I was at a meeting, and she had this list, because when you're a producer, I mean, you really do everything. Like, you have to set up the interviews, you have to set up, the times, you set up everything. And so I was looking at this list, and I never forget, she had this like a catering for the actors. And, this was like probably 12, 13 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so you were lucky if you were on a set and you got a cold piece of pizza. I mean, that was like a big thing. And so, but it was like really a lot of money. And I said, we could get this donated. And they were like, "Oh, Amy, no, there's no way." And so I just started to contact people I know. And by the time we started this film, I had everybody from like Olive Garden to, Red Lobster to Greek's Pizza here. I mean, they showed up with huge, like full meals. And that whole cast, I mean, I was like the queen of the set because they were all excited. And then that's kind of what catapulted from that, because people were like, "Amy, could you produce our film?" And
we need food.
And I was sort of like, so, I kind of got into it. And I do, I have been in several films. I really just like to be an extra. I think my part in life is always about the experience and to see other people shine. And so I just had fun doing that. And then what happened was I was contacted to do a documentary film down in Oldenburg, Indiana, and it was called A Sign of the Cross. Debbie Knox, who is a news anchor here, she was our narrator. I did it with a friend, Andy Murphy, and we went down there. She wanted to do something on the nuns to really highlight what they're doing. And not that this matters, but I am Catholic, so I was very interested. We went down there, and it was so strange because there's like this wall around there that it's this convent. And it took us a long time to actually kind of get in there, because when you're making
an external wall, or
yeah, well, not to get in the wall, but like they had to really, like, we had to have interviews with these nuns, and it's a trust issue.
Of course.
So
it's a documentary,
right? Yeah. And so I think that was when we completed it, and we had it on PBS, and these sisters are also part of the Marian University. So we had some screenings there, and it just gained a lot of publicity. And to me, that's what made me think, like, this is real. Like, we are making a documentary that's going to highlight these sisters for what they did, and really give a picture, so people, they might think the nuns, like, with a ruler, like, mean, this and that. It's like what they did. They go on these voyages, and they do these, amazing things. And I was hooked. And so after we did that, it's just kind of a process. Then somebody came to me and they said, listen, we know of this local ALS survivor. Her name is Jenni Brebitsky. And I want to do a short. She only has a certain amount of time that she's going to be living because of this horrible disease. And, to be honest, I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what ALS was. I thought it was like MS, and I was looking it up. And I didn't know, but I knew Jenni because I have been heavily involved with the Heartland Film Festival. So I knew her from there. And so I went, and then we started to do this process, but the funny thing is that we got a group from Carmel High School, some young kids, to actually film it, because one, that gives them an experience. And number two, we were trying to get a crew just to get this done. And so we came up with a short film, 17 minutes long, and all of a sudden we started putting in film festivals. It started winning. It won at Heartland. We won, Audience Choice Award. And then, and it's this wonderful story about this courageous and just phenomenal young lady who was a mother, and she has her husband. And to me, I just sat there and I thought, wow, she's going to pass away. Like, she might, she only has like a year to live, they told her. But I thought what was interesting, and I took away from it, is she said one thing to me, and she says it in our film. She said, like, to give is to receive, and to receive is to give, or is to get. And so if you think about that, when you give something, you're going to receive it. But when you're receiving that, you're giving back. And that was when I realized, like, this is where I need to be. I don't need to be making horror movies or comedy movies or sci-fi movies. This is about making films that are going to make a difference, and people are going to learn something. They're going to, like, for me, I learned all about ALS. I realized that there's boundaries with people and how they do this. And so,
what was the title of that?
That movie was called Grateful, the Jenni Brebitsky Story. And the other thing that's funny too, as I mentioned, I'm Catholic. They were Jewish, so we put it in Jewish film festivals. So for me, it was so exciting because, I got to really learn another, religion, and just kind of see, and another thing that's funny I have to say is, when you do a documentary, like I said, you kind of form a small family. Sure. And then
it's like you said, trust. It's a personal connection.
Because they're going to give you all of their personal, the gloves are off. And they kind of sign on that, they'll do it. And as a filmmaker, you want to respect their rights, but you want to tell the truth.
Right.
And so I have to say, one thing I always think is funny about Grateful is that when we first started doing it, Jenni's mom didn't know me, And, here's this person that came on at kind of like at the last minute to help and get it going, and kind of came in there and so they listed me as a producer, executive producer, and they didn't list her, and she's the mom, and she's still doing it, like a lot of stuff.
Sure.
And so I had kind of a back and forth with the director, like, we need to give her an executive producer title because she's big on it. And so it was funny because at first it wasn't like we didn't like each other. I think she's like, who is this person coming into my personal family?
Sure.
In my personal space, talking about my daughter, and we don't really know her other than Heartland. And it comes out that Joyce, Jenni's mom, not only did I have a wonderful relationship with Jenni before she passed, but Joyce and I have been best friends, and we still are today. I mean, we are like Lucy and Ethel, Matt and Jeff. I mean, Thelma and Louise.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, that's what I mean. I just like that.
Just don't drive on bridges.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So I just think it's neat with, I think it's really interesting that you form this bond of these people you don't know.
Yes.
And then you leave with that. But, and then after that, and it had a lot of success, and that was a short film, 17 minutes. Then everyone kept saying, Amy, what's your next film? What's your next film? And I was like, I don't know. And I didn't want to go from this top of, winning festivals all over the world, all over the country, to doing something that didn't really matter, just to make a film. So I sat on it for a long time. And then what happened, the next film was a film called The Addict's Wake. Mm-hmm. And that happened, that was like an aha moment, because I went to a funeral, a family friend of our funeral, and I asked where our friend's daughter was, because we grew up with them, and she lives in Carmel, Indiana. And she said, oh, Amy, she's at another funeral. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. And she said, there's been 5. And so then our funeral started. So I went home, I looked at her Facebook page, and she had like 500 comments. Like,
wow,
I cannot believe this is addiction. I cannot believe this has happened. How could this happen here? And how could this happen to young people? Mm-hmm. Because 5 young individuals had passed away from addiction. Mm-hmm. And that was my moment. I thought, okay, that's my film. So what I did is, as a producer, not even having anything to do, I started to go down her list. One thing that I always will do is, if I make a film, I want to have like a nonprofit or something, so that the proceeds will help, like ALS or addiction, or whoever.
Sure.
So I was looking, and I saw this this post, and somebody said, you should look into do something. And it was down in Nashville, Brown County, Indiana. I didn't know the girl at all. I just messaged her. She messaged back. We ended up knowing each other through our families. Her name is Lisa Hall. She didn't know anything. She just graduated from college. She didn't really know anything, but she married, went down there, we met, and she was like, I want to make this movie. And I said, I do too. So we wanted to find a director. And I knew the perfect director, Michael Hussein, who also helped us with the Sign of the Cross in some capacity. So she said, Michael Hussein? And I said, yeah. And she said, oh my God, he was like one of my friends in IU. So that was just like, so we called Michael. Michael set it on it. And then we started our journey. And we have made this wonderful film, and goes by 3 different stories, but it just focuses on how hard it is to deal with addiction. It also deals with forgiveness, and it just will give you, it's all of the films I've made, they're not super sad, but they have a point, and
sure,
you're going to learn something from it. You're going to realize, and all of the films I've done, there's always a focal point where somebody will touch somebody's heart. And then when I see the audience in tears because they were touched, I know that we did our job.
Sure.
So The Addict's Wake, the exciting thing about The Addict's Wake is Lisa she just used our sources. She worked really hard. We had it. We've gone to film festivals. We won. We actually won at Heartland again. It's my favorite film festival, as you can tell.
Of course.
We won Best Picture and also Audience Choice Award. And so after that, we decided to put it in some film festivals. We did really well. But then we started to have people wanting to know, like we had Anthem on board and some big companies. And that what they wanted to do is take the film and then have their employees watch it. And then, or we could screen it, or we would have different screenings all over the state. And we really liked that because we realized it was an opportunity for people to really understand addiction and to really, maybe have a different heart or a different look into it. So a lot of the people that were in it, they would travel. But at the same time, Lisa was great, and we got back on PBS, but we just did it national. So that film, Addict's Wake, I think was probably was shown, screened in almost every single state in here. Mm-hmm. So that was a big accomplishment, and I still was really working hard on that. But the next film that actually happened kind of in the midst of everything is mm-hmm. I remember I was right before COVID, super sick, had it 3 times. And I was in the hospital and I was looking at my iPad, and there's this family, the Cosine family. They own like Mimi Blues, or they big construction known here in Indiana. And I'm friends, with Jerry and David, they're brothers. And I'm sitting there and I see this brilliant short film about Nancy Noel, who is just one of the most profound, amazing female artists, but she's also a big philanthropist. Mm-hmm. And what they did is they made this short on her, that one of the sons, Alex Cosine, and I was watching it and I was in the hospital bed. I thought, oh my God, this is incredible. And I knew of her. I'm a photographer, so I've had taken her pictures, mm-hmm. but I just was like, man, this is awesome. So I was in the hospital. I got on the phone and I called Jerry and I said, I got to meet your son, Alex. Please have him get that off the internet, because this would be good for like film festivals. So he was like, yeah, okay, and so 6 months later, mm-hmm. Alex lives in New York, comes up Indiana, have a interview with Michael, the other son, and then Jerry, and then Kathy's the manager of Nancy Noel. And we decided to make a feature film. And so our mind was, we wanted it in Heartland because of the location. And so we got it in. It won an Audience Choice Award. We were super thrilled, only for the fact that, here's 2 sons, but the one son actually made it, Alex. And, he had to make a story about his mom that passed away of cancer. And, but in the meantime, learning everything she did, she, like I said, she was a philanthropist. She has a school named, she just opened a school in Africa. I mean, she helped with the AIDS Foundation. Some of this, I kind of laughed because I was just like, I can't believe how many celebrities know her and have her paintings. And the thing that's so nice is Alex and Michael, her sons, they're just so everyday, mm-hmm. They don't, it's, they're just the nicest people I know. So what's funny, I think, about the Nancy Noel project is that it was tricky because I'm in Indy and Alex is in New York. And then our editor, Sammy Muskleton, he lives in London. So I think the thing that was so different for me is
Zoom call.
Yeah. And that's what it was. And then, sometimes Sammy would be like, it'd be a time difference. And so, we'd be up so late. And I think what was really nice is, so Sammy and Alex work together. They have a company in New York called Third Strand, very successful. So they let me come in, and we just kind of had this threesome that just made this incredible film. And we included local people here from Indiana, like Patty Spittler was in it. I mean, Janelle Morrison from the Carmel Monthly was in it. I mean, people that knew her. And we had one of my friends, Mel. I just have to say this because this is like, so I do photography, and I was at a media event for the Indiana State Fair. And I saw Mel, and I gave her a hug and talking to her. And she said, "What's your next film, Amy?" And I said, "I'm doing something with Nancy Noel." Well, she looked at me and she started bawling. And this is like during the fair with all this stuff going around. And I said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "I've got to tell you." So she told me during all this commotion about the loss of her daughter and how she found comfort in a Nancy Noel painting. Mm-hmm. So I hurried up because our film was basically done. I called Alex. I said, "We have to get this girl in this film." Mm-hmm. And we did. And not the funny thing, but the interesting thing is every time we show it, the audience is just bawling because she has such a touching story. Mm. So, so that's basically it right now. And I know I went from just, being a small, mean lady to something that I enjoy, which is going to make a difference for people.
Sure. Wow. That's just a whole, series of experience. As I had mentioned off camera, my late brother had a couple of her pictures.
Yeah.
And that was given to a very loyal friend. And they're really beautiful. They're angel pictures.
Yeah.
And he had known Nancy himself. And there was an event in Zionsville. It's been a while back, but so as you know, in Indiana, there's always someone knows somebody.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, that'll be fascinating to watch. Well, that's it for Chapter 1 of this episode of the Omnibus Show. We're going to take a brief break, and we'll be back with filmmaker Amy Pauszek. Hello, and welcome back to Chapter 2 of the Omnibus Show. This week, we're with Amy Pauszek, a filmmaker and multi-talented. She does many things. Getting into Chapter 2, before we go into back on ideas of doing film, I'd love to learn more about your work as a talent scout with Talent Fusion. Can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. I work with Scott Tucker, and he owns Talent Fusion Agency. It's a modeling agency and acting agency. It's downtown at the Stutz building. It's been around for over 15 years. I think I've worked there for probably 13 years. I started out as talent, and then because of some of the connections I've had with the local communities with a lot of the work I do, I started telling him, like, well, what about this person? So I started sending him in, and he was like, "Amy, I don't think you could do both, but you have a knack of knowing who would be good for commercial." What Talent Fusion does is we supply the actors for like local commercials, regional and national too, but mostly local. Like say if you see Indianapolis Zoo or like Who's Your Lottery, most of those are our actors. And then we also do print. And so, maybe magazines and things like that. Somebody might just want to something to do with my watch, and they might just need somebing that has a beautiful arm. So we will fill those needs.
Where'd you get that watch?
I got this watch at Apple.
There you go. I know. I'm having fun with you.
I know. So I just kind of switched over, and because I also, I've worked on so many movies in the community, it's been a plus because, a lot of times I'll have friends that are maybe doing a local movie and they'll say, "Amy, I need these actors." And so I'll send them to Scott. And then what basically happens is, like for instance, if somebody wanted to maybe see about being in our agency, that's professional. So you would come in and do like an audition. And then if we accept you and you sign with us, then like we would have your hair color, your eye color, your weight, your height, we ask people, like, maybe you're good at juggling, because that's not something that's really normal, but there might be somebody that needs a juggler. So we have that, all your things that that you can do, your resume. And then what we do is when a commercial calls a company, and they're major companies, and they need a breakdown. And so they might say, we need somebody with, we need a man that looks wonderful in a suit, that's gray hair, very sophisticated and professional. I would automatically think, Dave Gibbs is the person right there.
Well, thank you.
So,
can I have my water shaken and not
say
stirred?
Cheers. Yeah. So at any rate, like, I already kind of know some people, so I would tell Scott. But what we really do is we just, like, say if they wanted somebody with blonde hair, green eyes, certain height, weight. Then what we do is we go through what we have on our roster, and then we send those to the clients, and then they have the headshot and information, and then they decide, like, oh, I like this person, and then you go in for an audition, and then that's how you'd get your job.
Fascinating. So, when's the movie?
I know, we got to get you on our roster for sure.
Wow. Well, thank you. Well, back to filmmaking. When I was a kid, I've mentioned this to another guest before, but I wanted to be a movie director as a kid. My father took me and my brother Terry in our old station wagon to the Hammond 41, which is the outdoor theater in Hammond, Indiana, where that's the town I was born in. And we saw Dr. Zhivago when I was 2.
Oh, wow.
And so, but the process is this, and it's like you think, oh my gosh, at 2, but it happened at 2, where it had sort of, David Lean was a filmmaker. My father liked David Lean movies. And there is the opening scene where you have the Ural Mountains and you have a line of people going to the funeral of Zhivago's mother. And you have a little Orthodox cross from a church that's in this corner for framing. So it's framed like that. And that just an incredible cinematography. And then they go to the scene, and then they have the moments where the young Zhivago's there and just being, it's sort of like, a child's, you're open, everything was coming, is happening, and they do it real fast. So it's like, that's a child's experience. And then they lower the mother down, and they must have had the microphones down in the ground because it was very loud, and then the priest is doing his part with the service, and then everybody's sort of standing around. Very briefly, they show the mother in the coffin in the ground, which that was the arrow to my head. I don't know how to explain it like that. And then you got where he's going through this experience, and then the whole thing with the spirit leaving the body, going out of the body, and but that's the way they do that is you have a cameraman on a cherry picker going up like that, and then they swirl around, and it's sort of going like this, and there's the music, and that's where dialogue, cinematography, and music all came together, and it's like in that moment. That's how you do movies. Yeah. And so that was a childhood thing, but I didn't go on to do that film director thing. But as a kid, that's sort of like, it was just this like arrow into the mind, and that kind of effect from film. Different things happen to different people. Right. But when you were talking about before about getting into theater, and they were getting into productions, what... Well, going back to when you did your first documentary with The Sign of the Cross, was that what really pulled? Like, what was the moment of pulling you into film before you decided upon documentary? Right, going in that direction. Yeah, because I think in the film industry, you kind of have like, what is your genre that you're doing? Like, I don't really want to do horror and then do something really serious. People do that, but I just wanted to focus on one thing. Mm-hmm. And I would say there was actually 2. One with a couple things. When we did The Sign of the Cross, I just found it so interesting because
especially being Catholic and growing up with CCD and everything. So I knew, I knew what I was getting into, but it was just being able to like walk into the world and hear things that they've done that I never even thought nuns do. I mean, most people think that, they teach school, they don't even have a choice. Like, this is where you're going and this is where you're going to do, and you're going to serve the Lord. So, that kind of really was so new to me, because it wasn't like, I don't want to say Hollywood, but it was more like lights, camera, action, let's go. And then when I brought up Grateful, the Jenni Brebitsky story about the ALS survivor, that's when it really hit me, because I remember my dad, who I was very close to, and he had passed away. And before he had passed, I remember he was in his bed, and I crawled in with him. And it was one of those most specialist moments, because, he asked me, what are you doing? And I said, gosh, Dad, my dad was a very prominent doctor. And I come from a family of medical, and here I am doing theater, which was perfectly fine. And my dad was always very proud of me. And I remember I called him in bed, and he said, what are you doing? And I said, Dad, I don't know, because I don't know anything about ALS, but they want me to do this film, and I don't know about it, but I know this lady, and it just sounds like it's so compelling. And he said, Amy, that's your niche, you need to do it. And I said, I don't know how much I'm going to get paid, or if I even get paid. He's like, you need to follow your heart, follow your conscience. That's what you want to do. And when my dad said that, it solidified me. This is what I need to do. And then it kind of continued, because he had passed. And I think I might have told you just in passing, when I was doing these crazy, sci-fi movies and all these things, my family supported me, but, that wasn't their cup of tea. So, they would come, and I think especially some of them, they'd be like, I don't know. And then once I started from the Sign of the Cross on, I really got the respect and the gratification of having my family proud, as well as my friend. But I just had, so many people were contacting me, media, can you do this and that? And I just realized, I need to be, life is short, and everyone's dealing with something. So really, if you think about it, the way I live my life is I just want to be kind. I'm not saying that I don't have a mean body, something bad, but it's just, when you, again, like Jenni said, when you give, you receive. And so I would just also have, in this industry that I've chosen, I've always just wanted to make it about that person. There's sometimes you can get somebody and it's got to be about me. And it's just funny, because it's really about that person. And when you can tell a story that really reaches the heart or teaches somebody something new, I can't explain it. You just feel like this, like this gratification and humble that this person allowed you to tell their story. And it's an important story. And I will say, every one of the documentaries that have done well, and it's just not me, it's a team of people.
Sure.
I mean, even like we're here, you've got the crew, the lights, we don't look that good unless we have these, lights and things. So it's a compilation. And so it just makes you feel good that you just have this little crew in a documentary film, and you just kind of wing and go for it and do this and that, and you come up with something, and it's just, you just feel like you made an accomplishment. And especially, I know I keep saying this, but it's just, I get feedback, like, people come up, gosh, I must have, when we did Jenni story, I think I must have gotten, I am not kidding you, 200 letters right afterwards saying, my brother has ALS, my sister does, my aunt, somebody just passed away. That really helped me. Could I get a DVD, or how, or a Blu-ray, how can I get this? And so that's where I go back to the nonprofit, because, I will say this, when we made that, DVDs were kind of like the in thing before streaming. And I remember I was talking to one of my really good friends, who's a well-known person here in Indiana, and she said, "Can I help you with this film?" And I said, "Everybody wants a DVD, but we don't have the funds to do it." because a lot of people don't realize too that like when I've made these, when I have this idea, okay, I want to make this on addiction or this or that, I have to go out and find the sponsors to pay for it. You know, we have to find people that want to believe in that project and say, I'm going to put some money on that. I'm probably not going to get it back, but I know it's going to do good. And we trust you to make a film that people will see. And so, I remember telling her, and she said, what do you need? And I said, well, I researched, it's about $2,000. And I remember she just reached out, wrote a check for $2,000. She said, you go get those DVDs. And those DVDs we have passed out to family members. You had mentioned somebody, and I was like, I've got a DVD to give you.
Friends or sisters, and they just a few years ago lost their mother.
Yeah.
Up in Wabash.
Yeah, and so, same way with Addict's Wake. I mean, we have people, that want to see it. So we are making it streaming now is the way to go. I'm sure these hopefully will get summer right now, but like for right now, they're in Indiana. We have there's an organization that's called Who Docs, and it's Hoosier Docs. So like if you wanted to, you could go to Who Docs and watch Grateful. It's a small amount of fee, and it's just a great way. And so I think my answer to your question is I think it's the heart of the people that I meet. That I get to tell their story, and I also become their family, people I didn't even know, and it's just this long bonding thing. I mean, I get together with Joyce all the time, and I didn't even know her.
Sure.
And we celebrate Jenni's birthday, so it's that.
That's fabulous. So it really is personal, your filmmaking. It's not just a sort of you do the project and you go on. When I started out as a photographer, and this is kind of going against my own kind. Part of the problem I had with being with photographers, because I'm not that way, is that many, not all, but many, and sorry, I'm not talking about you, but there were many I just found were kind of, what is it when you're a peeper? What's that called? I should know the word, but it's...
paparazzi?
Not paparazzi, but somebody who likes to look in on people.
Oh, a voyeur?
Voyeur. Many of them are voyeuristic. And what I mean by that is they're cool, they're blocked off, and what they'll do is they'll go and take a picture, gone. So it's like hit and run kind of. It's sort of the hit and run voyeurism, if you will. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
And that's why I socialized only with particular photographers, because I was finding too many in my life experience were kind of like that, and that's kind of not where, when you get to know people, you want to be with photographers who are similar in personality and so forth, because of, we're all exposed to different people, but really having more your core, or people who are really, they're in there, they're going to own up to it. They're not going to just take pictures and run.
Well, and that's another thing about me personally. I have done photography for newspapers and publications. And, I've even been flown out to New York and did a Broadway premiere, which was phenomenal. With just some of the celebrities I got to shoot. But I think with that is I care, and I think that's what people know about me. I care about that person. So I always one time, I'll be honest, I had this fantastic shot, and it was with Sophia Loren.
Oh,
and
fabulous!
And it was like the highlight, and it was funny because afterwards it was kind of funny because she kept saying, "Oh, you remind me of my sister. You remind me of my sister," and so it was kind of funny. So So we ended up getting a picture at the end, and it was funny because normally I don't like my pictures, but I liked the picture, but her eyes were closed and she just didn't look good. And I cared about that. And I thought she wouldn't like that if, it was the reverse thing. So I never posted it, but I kept it in my memory. Sure. And I think that when I go to events and I take, I'm not like a photographer that runs into an event, takes the picture, does their job, and leaves. I'm more of a
Paparazzi.
person that people, they know me, like, hey, there's Amy. And, I have a conversation with them. And they trust me that they know if I'm going to put their picture, on the social media or whatever, I take the time to edit it to make sure they look good and really spotlight on them. So I know what you're saying. There are a lot of people, or people just post pictures where you don't look good.
Again, that's in a way also the nature, especially if you're a news journalist, because I started out news photography, as opposed to commercial studio photography and what have you, or events even. Events you have to be more personable, whereas news photography, a lot of time you're on deadline, you've got to go.
You get them in there.
You get them in there. But I always when I did my newspaper jobs, I always try to make sure that I, at least connect with them if I was taking photographs.
Yeah.
You have to go around and get your name. I'm sorry, your name is Amy. Can you spell that for me, please?
I have a trick to that, though.
What's that?
So, like, sometimes if I have to get everybody's name, sometimes a lot of people they'll just take the the piece of paper and the pen and they'll start writing them. So I say, okay, everybody see, Janet is writing down everybody's name. So if your name's spelled wrong, remember, it's Janet, not me. And they always laugh,
And who's Humphrey Bogart here?
Yeah, right.
Somebody's just trying to, kind of have fun with the crowd. But yeah, that's a good practice. Less and less film these days. I take it. Do you use film or digital media when you do that?
Well, I have to say, when I'm taking pictures, I use a Canon, and I digitally. It is interesting because nowadays everybody thinks they're a photographer, but like I can go to an event and use my my cell phone. And what I do like about that is it's kind of sad. It's catch-22 because people are like, "Where's your your big lens and your camera?" Because it makes a big thing.
It's right.
Yeah. And then they're like, "What are you doing that?" But to see, it goes back to the trust, because everyone can they could be taking pictures too, but they're like, "Oh, Amy's taking it. When I see it, I know it will be good." I don't mean it like that, but you know what I mean. Like they know that.
I understand.
So because I'll go home and crop it, make sure they look good, and edit it. But nowadays, it's really interesting because, instead of going back to your computer, sticking an SD card, doing this and that, sitting in, nowadays you can actually just zoop right there and it gets right to them.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So it's technology. I have to say, I hate to admit this, but I grew up on the typewriter. I didn't grow up on a computer.
I did too.
Okay. And so, I try to keep up on things. But as a producer, I don't, like when we did the Nancy Noel project, Alex, her son, was the director, and he had all these wonderful footage. I'm gonna have to make sure everybody can see this film, but he had 8mm, film of his mom that has never been seen before, and it was just so cool. So he worked on, the directing and everything. And then Sammy, who lives in London, he was the editor. So I really don't do a lot of the process of that. I'm more of the go-getter to set everything up. And then when we have a screening, to make sure we have press there to make sure people see it. And what you were talking about, sometimes when there's a movie and it moves on, I don't do that. So right now, all these other films we did, people have moved on and they're making other films. I'm still doing that, but right now, I was approached probably by 5 people. I've got an idea for you. I got this. And I just have to say, no, I can't work on anything right now. My focus is on the Nancy Noel project. Because I figure if this family or whoever they allowed us to get into a window of their home and their heart, it's up to me to make sure people see it.
To do it right and not do a shallow job.
Right.
Yeah, that makes a big difference because, it's that trust level, as you say, that when you do a project like that, when you get in that trust zone, you have to follow through.
And it's not, some of the films we worked on is probably over a $350,000 budget. It's not, these aren't low budget films. Sure. And so, we want the best quality, the best people working on it. And for me, it's about being honest, loyal, from your heart and make sure you're making something that they're going to be happy and you're going to be happy. And again, I say this all the time, but life is too short. We have to make something that people are going to go home and they're going to talk about it. They're going to see a documentary and, spend maybe days. Like, I was just thinking about that. What about this? Or, oh, did you ever think about this? It starts a conversation. And then when you get media involved and all these come apart, it's just like a miracle. It's like magic. I mean, when you mentioned seeing Dr. Zhivago, I mean, I remember going with my dad. I think people always laugh because my favorite movies are The Wizard of Oz, and I like Jaws. Yeah. Dun, 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 dun.
And it has those little sounds like bum, 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 bum.
Yeah. And then
or the woman bicycling.
Yeah. And I mean, and then the other one is, I mean, I think remember going to Eastwood Theater in Indianapolis, seeing Star Wars. And
dum, 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 dum. You got to get the riff in
exactly.
there.
I mean, and then, when you're seeing these movies and you see the magic and, the lights, the cameras, and like you said, the cinematography and how it's, how Star Wars in the 70s went to right now. And it's just AI, all these crazy things that are happening is like you're part of that. And so, and one thing about The Wizard of Oz, I'm telling you, this is so funny, but I used to sit there and be like, oh, watch it in sepia, a black film, to the magical when they, when they go
color.
to the Oz.
Yeah.
But one of the things I had realized is the next time you or anybody watches The Wizard of Oz, look when Dorothy is in, walking on the yellow brick road and the Munchkins are coming out. If you look closely, those are like cardboard sets. They're like wood. And all my life I thought, how did they do this magical thing with all these beautiful flowers and stuff? And then it's so funny because every time I was watch it and I look and I was like, I cannot believe it was the magic of sets.
Was it on the digital?
Yeah.
The digital, it's like, there's a different.
It's different.
Film covers a lot of things.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of film. Whereas digital is like, this is,
I don't know. I don't know if I like it yet because honestly, I do worry that in our society we really rely on computers and things a lot. And sometimes I worry, like, if we start doing all this AI, it really could take over actors' jobs or people's.
Oh, sure.
I mean, it's an interesting, field. And so I think with the industry, I think what I've always said is I'm a Hoosier, I'm an Indiana girl, and I just really feel blessed and lucky to live in a state that I love and be able to make films that make a difference and that, are right here. And I don't need to go to, beautiful places. I love going to New York, LA, all these places. But Indiana, our state, really has some beautiful places and really good, talented actors. So.
Yeah. Well, it's
and we're going to get you at television too.
You're going to get me on there. Okay. Hello. Well, thank you, Amy.
Yeah, thank you so much.
It's been great having you on. Well, that's it for this episode of the Omnibus Show. Our guest this week is Amy Pauszek. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Hotel Carmichael. Today we're shooting at Feinstein's. We look forward to being with you on our next episode of The Omnibus Show.
If you enjoyed this program, please like, share and subscribe to continue the conversation. For the Omnibus Show newsletter, please sign up at theomnibusshow.com.